Stalker Shadow of the Zone released today, and I really have to say, it was disappointing. The only thing I feel that they got anywhere on point was definitely the action aspect. They were really doing some amazing breach and clears. They had their tactics down and everything. It was like I was watching an actual, like an action film, not anything related to Stalker at all. There's maybe, two or three instances where they see an anomaly and this hilarious dialogue where the character says, "Oh, watch out, there's a gravity anomaly behind you," and the other guy says, what are you even talking about, man?" And he says, "Just don't go over there."
What's the gravity anomaly over there? What? Just don't go over there, okay? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, man.
It was fucking nuts, dude. This dialogue, it's so stupid. How do you get into the zone and you don't know anything about any anomalies? You just refuse to believe it. You've never seen any anomaly and you're that deep into the zone. You're fighting Monolith. One detail they did get right that I do enjoy is that they shoot the Monolith multiple times and they just shrug it off. They don't care. That was a good detail. Good attention to detail right there. I wasn't really a fan of the cameos, and I was told that the budget was $700K, and I'm reading comments now that say it's closer to 300, which is much more believable when you think about aspects such as CGI. For example, whenever Crow finds an artifact and it doesn't really resemble an artifact much at all, it just looks like they stuck a light bulb inside something and called it a day. There's no... I guess you can make an argument for practical effects, but it just doesn't feel the same. I'm not really one to argue for CGI, but I feel like in this case, you might need something to help you along there, because this just looks flat and unappealing. It doesn't look like you're getting a magic alien rock out of an anomaly, okay? Like, you're not getting an otherworldly thing that may harm or otherwise help you. This isn't a thorn or a soul or a battery, okay? It doesn't look cool, it doesn't look neat, it doesn't look interesting. It looks like you grabbed something from the dollar store and painted it a flashy color. I mean, fuck, it doesn't even glow. He just found it on the ground. It wasn't even anywhere near an anomaly, which, I mean, you could kind of fight on that point, but I feel like there still should have been an anomaly somewhere believably nearby. For those that were turned off by the film, didn't want to watch it fully, I'll give you a brief synopsis. This is from the IMDb page. A seasoned free stalker tasked with guiding a band of mercenaries deep into the zone to investigate a paranormal radio signal, based on the S.T.A.L.K.E.R video game series by GSC Game World. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is a video game series by GSC Game World set in an alternate reality wherein strange paranormal anomalies populate the Chernobyl exclusion zone. It's interesting to see the discrepancies in spelling here. These anomalies can range from extremely dangerous to highly valuable and are sought by various groups who risk it all to venture into the zone. These intrepid nomads are referred to as stalkers. Shadow of the Zone chronicles a seasoned free stalker tasked with guiding a band of mercenaries. Along the way, they will uncover the nightmarish effects of exposure to the signal in addition to the grim reality of the signal's existence. An opening text crawl explains that after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster and a series of supernatural phenomena, the Chernobyl exclusion zone became rife with unique space-time anomalies, mutant creatures, and mysterious artifacts. Bearing otherworldly properties, various factions, military bodies, and governments have since taken interest in the valuable items and information that can be gleaned from the area, and the people who explore the zone are referred to as stalkers. A freelance stalker named Crow sits in some underbrush as some enemy soldiers from the Monolith faction pass by. After he stealthily dispatches one with a knife, the rest of his team come out of the woods and join him in taking out the rest of the soldiers and clearing out their camp. While the team investigates the camp, Crow suddenly has a vision of an entity speaking to him from the shadows of the tree line beyond. Then he snaps back to reality. One day earlier, Crow arrives at the cordon to meet with a mercenary team that has hired him as their escort through the Chernobyl exclusion zone. With them is a man called Brain, a sheepish, tech-savvy fellow with little experience venturing into the zone. In the briefing, The team learns that a suspicious radio signal has been detected in the zone and has been attracting various stalkers, soldiers, and mercenaries to seemingly wander off and never return. The team has been tasked to track down the source of the signal and investigate the disappearances. After traveling through the zone for a bit, the team sets up camp. In the morning, they find that one of the group members, named Weaver, has disappeared overnight, and the rest of the men suspect that he fell victim to the signal. While the mercenaries plan their next move over breakfast, Crow and Brain sit a ways off and swap stories about how and why they ended up in the zone. Brain lost his daughter to a debilitating sickness, while Crow lost his pregnant wife to a drunk driver. The team continues to trek through the zone until eventually reaching the facility that seems to be the source of the signal. After taking out the monolith soldiers guarding the place, the team splits up to search the inside and sets up a defensive perimeter for the second wave of monolith soldiers sure to descend on the area. While exploring the building, the men find that it is under some sort of lockdown. When they reach a control room, the men begin looking for information to find out what sort of activity was going on there and how to lift this lockdown. Crow finds a locked smartphone, and after breaking into it, finds Brain's contact information on it, making him immediately suspicious. He questions Brain at gunpoint, who reveals that he is actually a member of the group, which is the secret research organization largely responsible for the catastrophe that turned the zone into what it is today. Brain explains that the facility had been experimenting with tapping into the noosphere, a collective sphere of psychological influence made up of all collective human thought. The group created the facility to build a device called the Hive that could glean the knowledge of various individuals and compile as much information as possible into a single collective consciousness. However, the experiment fell apart after the Hive became self-aware and turned hostile. Brain has been tasked with returning to the facility to see if any of the research can be recovered, or if the project can be salvaged, and to authorize the destruction of the facility if not. Brain is apprehensive to destroy the Hive, however, as it could be the key to allowing all humankind to experience a life without pain, suffering, and loss. Outside the building, the monolith forces move in on the team, and a massive firefight breaks out. With time running short, Crow and Brain move further into the facility until coming to a room where they find a delirious Reaver kneeling on the ground and rambling incoherently. As he turns to face them, a tendril of light strikes out from above and slices his head off, before picking it up and drawing it into the Hive, which holds hundreds of severed heads to leech knowledge from. Crow and Brain flee the room, but a blast of psychic energy from the Hive throws them to the ground and knocks Crow unconscious. Crow wakes up in his old house where he sees his wife alive and well cooking in the kitchen. Realizing this is some sort of dream or vision, he cautiously approaches her and locks her in a tearful embrace, before moving his attention to the next room over, where the man responsible for the drunk driving incident that killed his wife is bound and gagged in a chair. Crow breaks down in front of the man and decides to forgive him, accept the loss, and move on. He awakens in the hallway alone to find a note left by Brain with the instructions and authorization code to destroy the facility. He contacts the rest of the team outside, then joins them in the firefight to make room for them to escape. The monolith take out several mercenaries, but the rest of the group is eventually able to make a run for it and get out of the area. After coming to a stop in the woods some time later, the surviving mercenaries compliment Crow and invite him to permanently join their group, but he is unsure what his future now holds. And that's all from IMDb. Aside from a few nitpicks I had before, I've got a couple more actually. In one shot, the team are advancing to the facility. Behind them you can see artillery. Where is this coming from? Who has this artillery? Who are they firing at? It doesn't make sense. After all, this is the same area where, in the games, you never see any sort of vehicles aside from death trucks and army helicopters, really. Of course, there were vehicles that were planned, but, I mean, come on, you have large stuff like this, you don't think we'd notice it. It's out of place, and rightly so. When Crow and Brain were talking about, swapping their stories, they saw an anomaly across the river. That was really cool, actually. That reminded me of the NLC menu screensaver. Really cool. And I suppose it could be a nod to the movie/TV show. I suppose that was probably what they were going for. There's one shot where they're going outside, and there's clearly an emission about to happen, or maybe it just ended. Regardless, there's an emission outside, and they continue to go outside. By the way, I don't want to call this low resolution, but I feel like it could look clearer, maybe. It just doesn't look very... It looks blurry, unless that's intentional. The anomaly PDA sounds felt shoehorned, but I suppose I get the nod they were trying to do there. I appreciate the megaphone and them standing outside 100 Rad's bar, but since when do mercenaries have Rostock as an FOB? I guess in this universe you wanna... Well, it's after the trilogy, right? So I don't know. I guess there's a lot of holes you could fill in there, but I just don't get it. How big of a power vacuum does there have to be for mercenaries to be in Rostock and not have duty throwing an absolute fucking shit fit over it? Now, if it was military or ecologists that were in Rostock, that would make sense, because they commonly work together. Well, at least the ecologists and mercenaries do. Maybe not the military so much. Still, it would make more sense than them taking over Rostock, you know, the place where duty lives, unless this is their way of saying duty is no more. No idea, because later on in the film they also say that Monolith are coming down from army warehouses, so maybe Freedom failed to repel them. Or maybe Freedom no longer exists either. I suppose the two very big points I want to hone in on here. I get what they're doing with the mercenaries. They want them to be Western. They want them to be foreign, sound different, okay, but it really breaks my immersion hearing, I don't know, just Americans everywhere. I would understand if it's maybe one or two, but it's basically like an entire squad of these guys. I mean, weren't they originally supposed to be German at some point? Everything really just feels out of place, except for maybe Crow. I feel like they got him pretty good. Then there was the room clearer or some shit. Body, I think his name was. He throws himself into an anomaly with a monolith guard. You know, I don't know, I just feel like there could have been more interaction with the environment. I mean, for fuck's sake, we didn't even see any mutants at all. We saw, what, like 2-3 factions maybe? Come on. You have the main mercenary squad, you have the one loner, you have the ecologist, if that's really what you want to call him, and you have the monolith, so really 4. At least Duty is, you know, they're using Duty's base, right? So there's a little bit of representation there, but if you liked Freedom, you're shit out of luck here, buddy. No idea what to tell you there. Of course, it was only an hour long. And for some reason the credits were 11 minutes long. I get it though, because if you try to put in every faction, then it would feel like you're pandering too much, so you could go either way there. Apart from seeing an anomaly like 3 fucking times, an artifact once, we never see any mutants at all. I think I heard a bark maybe 1 time. I thought they were gonna have to run into a pack of dogs or something, but no. It's all just human combat, which again lends itself to the action thriller movie. This isn't Jason Bourne, man. I'm sorry. If you donated to this movie, you know, you missed your mark. Sorry to tell you. If I personally donated to this film, I would have to see a lot of promise beforehand, and this just was not promising. You know, I'll tell you what though, it's not a complete loss going into it. Like, I expected to be somewhat disappointed. I would give it maybe a 6. It could do with more immersion, more atmosphere, more world building, but again, there's only so much you can do in 1 hour. As for some redemptions, there are some parallels you can draw to Tarkovsky's Stalker and the Stalker franchise from this film, such as the Stalker Guide idea, which is pretty classic at this point. So it's not entirely a wash. It comes pretty fucking close though. I have also read that GSC has apparently promoted this film and there may or may not be merch connected to it, but these are pretty unsubstantiated on the merch part. The top comment for the video was of course from GSC praising it, so I can at least believe that part. Here, I'll give you an idea off the top of my head. Let's circle back to the artifact. You want an idea for a cheap looking artifact that you can pull off without needing a ton of CGI? You can put together some wood or some shit, talk to a couple art students, get a thorn, okay, use wood, plastic, whatever the case may be. Have your character pick it up. A few minutes later, they feel, really energetic, and then later on, they have to bandage, but they don't know why. There you go. That was maybe, 30 seconds? And that was better than the artifact that Crow picks up and it's never seen again. Like, he never sells it. Like, there wasn't a point, really, for it to be in the film. At least with a thorn idea, he could later on say, could you maybe give me some bandages or some shit, I picked up this stupid artifact and, it's making me bleed. I don't know. Anything is better than just nothing. To branch off of the guide part, in that it's not completely unredeemable, I did actually like the little dream sequence right at the end. It's a good nod, and it gives us plenty of insight into Crow's depth as a character. He comes to the zone to escape, as he puts it, and at the end of the film, he learns to accept things and forgive the person that killed his family. It was a good moment, even if I didn't really like the transition right after. I just feel like there's a lot they could have tried on much, much harder with this film. The only thing they 100% got was the fucking gunplay, man. These highly trained mercs go through buildings, they clear. They know what they're doing, right? Except they don't know how to identify anomalies, apparently, but point is, they know what they're doing with guns. This leads to pretty satisfying fights that we see, even if they do draw on for a bit too long, but that makes sense because the monolith has a much bigger force that they're trying to hold off here. And finally, to look at it purely from a filmmaking cinematographer sense, some of these shots looked quite good. Even I will freely admit that, even if I didn't like the better part of the film. I was hoping for at least a couple shots of the CNPP back in the brush somewhere off to the side, or even at all really, but we didn't see any landmarks, so I guess you could say it just takes place in the woods somewhere, but I don't know, man. We really just saw Restock and a facility somewhere. If you removed Restock entirely, there's nothing you could say about this apart from anomalies that says this is a stalker-inspired film. The scene in Restock with the PDA, the only time a PDA is mentioned, by the way. So, you remove Restock, you remove PDAs, you remove the megaphone, you remove the bar. You get a bunch of guys being led by some guy to go find a facility somewhere to turn it off for some reason, only to find out one of them is a double-crosser working for the other side this whole time. So, yeah, it looks pretty bland, right? Now, if the director were to say, oh, you know what, yeah, this was actually inspired from this game series, you'd be like, what? But there wasn't this, or this. It just feels like a fucking shooter. End of the day, though, I get it. The majority of the money probably went into getting the cosplay LARP gear, the minimal CGI that was involved, Not that that's a bad thing. I'm always a pusher for practical effects, but I mean, I still feel like they could have did the CGI differently. I'm just really at a loss, actually, to know, where did the budget go, man? Like, you get all the gear, the guns and everything, You get the actors, the extras. I'm sure that's a good, decent chunk of it, but like, where did all the rest of the fucking money go? Like, I really cannot see this being a six-figure film. I really can't. I'm sorry. If you talk about the CGI, maybe, but past 200K? I mean, how much set design was there really? And to be honest, where did they even film? I mean, did they film anywhere near Ukraine at all? I would assume not, because, you know, it's pretty tense right now. So, how do we know that we didn't just find a building in the woods somewhere, you know, and just fucking use that? I'm not saying that's what they did. I just want to account for everything. There's so many films out there that have made the most of what they could with such a minimal budget that it's unbelievable. And these guys are in six figures and counting. And by the way, in some scenes, the camera did feel a little shaky, so I wonder if they had a tripod, you know, a gimbal, anything like that. Of course, this could all be done on purpose, but shaky cams just kind of turned me off, to be honest. And the film ends abruptly. The mercenaries offer Crow to join their crew. They're like, hey, you know what? You're a pretty good shooter, and we need people after, you know, what just happened. So, you want to join up? And he was like, no, but I don't know what I want to do now. And that's how it ends. It leaves it open-ended, maybe, potentially. So, there could be room for a sequel. I feel like they could have tried better with the casting of the mercenaries. They did good with Crow, though, I'll say that. And I didn't expect the Monolithians to be just almost totally silent. I mean, there's maybe like one line, I think. There might have been none, actually. They were just totally silent. This could have also just been a design choice, but I feel like if one side is saying, I'm reloading, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, one of us is KIA, that the Monolith would do that too, right? Just like they do in game. If a member of your group doesn't know anything about anomalies and they're about to go into a firefight where an anomaly is actually nearby, wouldn't you want to show them really quickly how to at least avoid that anomaly or see if they're really close to one? You don't have a couple bolts on hand that you could give to them to say, hey, if you think you're in a tough area, a tough spot, throw this and see if anything happens. Come on, man. They just show them off, but there's no resolution. There's no workaround to it. It's just, you're going to run into this and die. Or you're not. But I mean, seriously. A comment I read in the video's comment section said that Brain looks far too young to really ever be involved with a group at all because, you know, they've been around for ages since the original disaster, right? So, I mean, I agree with that, but I don't know, man. I think there should have been more representation involved. Not even in the abandoned, like, service tunnel thing right up to the fucking door. Like, there weren't even a couple of Chicanos, for Christ's sake. Come on. That would have been the perfect opportunity. It hasn't been used for years. There's not a couple rats. Granted, you know, big Chernobyl mutant rats, but still, you know, rats, and more importantly, mutants. But, hey, you know, what do I know? You've got your characters walking into potential anomaly fields with no way to check for these anomalies to pick up an artifact. Where's the detectors? You can't get together with... I think there's been at least one, maybe two people that have made actual working detectors and posted them online. I'm pretty sure I've seen that on Reddit, actually. It was really fucking cool, man. This guy made an echo detector and, like, it actually turned on and shit. Like, he had the actual lettering and everything. Like, it looked like a real detector. They can't get with that guy and be like, hey, you know what? We know you did this for free, but we want to do a movie and, you know, if you could potentially pump out a few more of these, we'll reward you for your time and effort. You know, it seems like a win-win on both sides. But hey, you know. In regards to the story, the only really new thing we learn about is the Hive. So The sea consciousness is this new thing now. We just get a more physical representation of it, I guess. It's like a tangible thing now. Weaver decides to run directly headfirst into it for some reason. That was a pretty cool shot too. It zooms out and it's this epic, huge shot. Here's a movie plot idea. It's been done a million fucking times, but why not just find the wish granter, or attempt to? I know this is a decades old idea going back to Roadside Picnic itself, but if it's tried and true, why not? It'd be a good homage to the original book. The movie, I mean, I feel like it is kind of overdone because the original Shadow of Chernobyl did it, but I mean, I feel like it'd be a pretty solid pitch, especially if this is for a more movie audience, somebody who, doesn't actually want to play the game, have no interest in video games, that sort of thing. Much like how the Return to Silent Hill movie is doing this for people who don't really care much for video games. It's a good way to gauge interest. Everybody praises Shadow of Chernobyl for its amazing, stunning story. Why not take some inspiration from that story and try to go with a plot from that? It feels like there was minimal writing on this project. If I was the one doing this shit, I would be getting those hardcore gamers out there. I would be saying, okay, what did we miss? What should we improve on? Getting some feedback. It just feels like a movie version of Escape from Tarkov, except there's not really any extraction. Or traders, really, but I mean, I'm just saying, too much action, not enough sci-fi fantasy. There's not even any horror either. We as humans are generally afraid of things we can't understand. Why not play on that? Bring that into the film. I mean, I guess they kind of did with The Hive, but it was already expanding on lore we already had. At the end of the day, there's nothing really new added here. It just builds itself off of older concepts and tries to pass it off. I'm not one to say that new is bad, or to be a contrarian for the sake of doing so. I mean, this film isn't unwatchable, it's not that bad that you actually physically have to turn it off, right? I was able to get through it, so it really wasn't that bad. But as a S.T.A.L.K.E.R fan, you can't just watch it and not notice the inconsistencies spread throughout. This just feels like it's in the same vein as those other S.T.A.L.K.E.R short films that are posted on YouTube and other platforms, really. Like, if this actually, in another world, like if this got to a theater and like you actually paid money to see this shit, you'd probably feel a bit cheated. So it's a good thing that they're not charging money for it, that it was entirely a fan-funded project. So I do like that aspect. It's able to be seen for free, spread for free, commented on, that sort of thing. It's wonderful that we have platforms to even do that sort of thing. It's amazing to see how far technology has come. Even still, with such platforms, we're able to see just how sorely lacking some things are, and we're able to comment on them. I guess that'll be my final comment for it. I don't like it or dislike it, because I do like and dislike it for multiple reasons. I'm going to say I feel mixed about it. I'm going to say it's lacking. If they went over it with a more focused eye, they could have achieved a lot more. But, oh well. At the end of the day, I'm always happy to see more S.T.A.L.K.E.R content. I'm always happy to see more life breathe into a older series. I could keep going on and on about this, but I think I'll just end it here. Here's to more stuff like this, more content like this, albeit with a more careful eye.